Hey, Tom's Tab here. In this video, I'm going to share with you 4 tips to help get rid of wrist pain and help prevent wrist injuries in the future. Now, this is a common question that I receive in my email. I know this is a common issue for athletes, is getting wrist pains while we're training or during our training. And oftentimes we're putting a lot of impact or a lot of strain and stress on just that small joint. So if we're lifting heavy objects, if we're doing hand balancing, we're putting a lot of weight and pressure just on that joint. If we're doing vaults and parkour, we're jumping, a lot of impacts going on those joints there. So this is a pretty common thing.
The reason why this is so common is the wrist is a pretty complicated area. There are actually 8 different small bones and joints with several ligaments in just this one small area. So when we're talking about the wrist joint, we're actually talking about several different joints and ligaments in this one area.
Now, I had my experience with wrist pains and it sucks because it takes away a lot of your training, or it's just a nuisance to deal with. And one of the reasons that was actually causing my wrist pain, and you might want to look into this, is I was actually on the computer for a long time using my mouse and on the keyboard, my right wrist. I didn't know what it was at the time. I was like, man, my right wrist is just giving me problems when I'm doing hand balancing. Why is it not my left? Now I realized I was doing a lot of computer work at the time, spending hours on the computer and my hand in this position, and that was actually what was causing it. So that was a source of overtraining. But we'll get into more of that later. But the first tip I want to share with you, and this is a really important one, is warming up the wrists before we exercise or before we train. This is often neglected just because we're ready to work out and we just don't even think about warming up the wrists. We want to make sure to take them through a full range of motion. So a simple exercise is just doing 10 circles, keeping the wrist going 10 circles one direction, 10 circles the other. And then what I like to do is also write the alphabet with my hands, so that way I get the full range of motion here. The second tip I want to give you is building strength for your wrist. A lot of us focus on developing the bigger muscle groups, but we don't take time to focus on the forearms and the wrist here. And it's really important to develop this. So a good strength exercise is we can use resistance bands, so we can take through the range of motion again, get a resistance band and go back and forth, go side to side. And this is going to be really good for building up that strength. If we don't have resistance bands, we can find a simple wall. This is one of my favorites I used for a while to strengthen my wrist. And we lean against the wall. Now we can add resistance or take away resistance depending how far we go into the wall. The further we lean into it, the more resistance we get. And then we can take it to the ground to add ultimate resistance. But you're just going to place your hands on the wall here, fingertips spread. And what you're going to do is lift your body away from the wall just with the fingertips here. So you're getting that extension here, and we're strengthening the wrist here. And then once we do 10 to 15 reps this way, we're going to do 10 to 15 reps this way. Just a great exercise for developing that wrist strength. The third tip is improving wrist flexibility. Now, a common issue with injury or causing wrist pain is the wrist not being flexible enough and going past the flex point. So you're either hyperextending or going too far in a direction. So we want to make sure to stretch our wrists after our workout sessions. Now, a lot of times we forget to do this, but really make sure to focus on this. So 2 good stretching exercises is just getting in a push-up position on the knees, or you can go push-up position here, and just stretching the wrist this direction, going forward, holding for about 30 seconds, and then flipping it, going back. So that way we get nice and stretched. You can also use the wall, and we don't want to forget to also do the back side of the wrist. So we did the front here, we also want to do the back. And we can lean against the wall. If we're really badass, we can do it on the ground here. If you're really flexible, you can hold there. The fourth tip I'm going to give you, and this is one of the most important, so I saved it for last, is just preventing overtraining. A lot of times we'll be training and we'll feel a little bit of pain and we'll just keep on going. Anytime you feel a little bit of pain, it's your wrist telling you, hey, stop it. I need to rest a little bit. But whenever you feel that pain or anything like that, make sure to hold back off of it. I know for parkour athletes, a big thing is when we're doing kongs, that we want to keep on doing kongs or doing vaults the whole time, because we just want to keep on getting new moves. But whenever we start to feel any pain there, hold back a little bit. And then another thing you want to always think about is using good form when you're doing any type of exercise. So, for example, if we're doing the plunge, or if we're doing different push-ups, we want our wrists to be in line, and we don't want to put pressure going from one side. So a lot of times what will cause wrist pain is just bad form. So we're having our forearms at an angle, putting too much pressure on one side or the other. So make sure we have good alignment with the joints. Make sure the wrists and the joints all line up so there's not any pressure going from one direction or the other. So those are 4 tips to help with wrist pains and wrist injuries. Make sure to start implementing these, especially if you're not doing the warm-up or the stretching afterwards. Those are huge. Remember to make sure not to overtrain. And as always, train safe. Make sure to subscribe for more tutorials and videos. And I'll see you in the next video.